Project Fundraiser. I'd like to thank Mrs. Trisha Rady for hosting this on this lovely property. Thank you. We'd like to thank Andrea Larson for the beautiful decorations, setup, arrangement, and everything here. So thank you. We'd like to thank Veronica Carroll for her guidance and her assistance with everything from invitations and planning. We'd also like to thank Lee Oliver for traveling a distance to get one of our featured guests tonight. Thank you, right? We'd like to thank CNJFO for sponsoring the food.
Woo!
And we'd love to thank all of our other sponsors. There are so many wonderful sponsors and so much support. It's heartening. Thank you so much. We have a special thank you for Cheryl Lynn and John Simpson and their family. We have had a custom belt buckle made for her, DC Project, with her name on it, and it has bling on it, but it's not here on time. So we have a lovely picture of what it looks like. It's going to be a gorgeous, one-of-a-kind custom belt buckle with bling on it with your name and the DC Project. So thank you.
Here we go.
Thank you. I'm sorry it's not here on time.
Awesome.
Oh yes, Mom. Yeah.
It should be here by the beginning of
Thank you. You're welcome.
Yes, ma'am.
That's great. So thank you for participating in the raffles. We do have a silent auction going on a valued object back there. So if you are a firearms ID holder in New Jersey, go take a look and see what you're missing. Go over there. I would like to introduce each one of the DCP ladies who've traveled from various states to be here so that you can hear all about the DC Project. She's the president of a 40,000 member club, CCDL, and she is Connecticut delegate, and she is on the DCP advisory board. Holly Sullivan.
Thank you all so much. Again, my name is Holly Sullivan, and I serve on the advisory board of the DC Project.
Closer.
A little closer.
The point of moving the microphone forward is to...
I've been with the DC Project since our very first year back in 2015. And I've had the privilege of leading teams around the Capitol, particularly with some of the more difficult states. And I think you guys all know what we're talking about. So we're neighbors. At the end of the day, Connecticut, New Jersey, New York, we understand. And we have a lot of the same struggles and certainly want to learn from one another and see what we can do to collaborate. Now, I act as the legislative advisor on the DC Project advisory board. So I'm a point person that any member of the DC Project can go to if they're struggling to engage in their state legislature, if they need to make appointments with legislators and they're having a hard time doing so, if they need to better understand a bill, or to prepare to give public testimony. So I serve as that individual that they can go to for guidance on how to get that going. Beyond my work with the DC Project, as Teresa mentioned, I'm the president of the Connecticut Citizens Defense League. We are the preeminent Second Amendment organization in Connecticut, and I am currently the only female that leads a state-level Second Amendment organization in this country. So our work is constant vigilance. And not only in the legislature, but also in the issuance of permits, local ordinances in our 169 towns in Connecticut. And when COVID hit, our governor shut down fingerprinting for pistol permits. So we sued him. A federal judge who was appointed by Barack Obama ruled in our favor, and we won. It's possible. It's possible to get these things done. And like New Jersey, we cannot rest. Our board, our committee, our members, they all must hold individuals accountable in our government. However, what I really want to speak to you about today is the character of the women in the DC Project. You've probably heard that well-behaved women seldom make history. And I'm here to tell you that that's not true. These women have incredible class, talent, and discipline. We are not crass. We have families, community involvement, and that's why we're effective, is because of our discipline and the standard that we hold ourselves to. Our careers, we are the voices for those who believe in our rights and need to be heard. We follow the law. However, even more, there is a deeper knowledge of the ethics that guide us. It sets standards for how we engage with the opposition, how we interact with politicians, and another, I have found it also sets a very high bar for what we allow in our lives. Our boundaries and those that we spend our time with. It dictates how we raise our children. It's the truest form of public service and a tremendous sacrifice of our time, our funds, and our energy. So well-behaved women can and do make history by guiding the direction of this great country and ensuring that we do all that we can to give our children the rights that our forefathers intended for us. So I thank you truly for supporting the DC Project, and I hope that the voices you hear tonight will encourage you to also be vigilant in defending what we know is ours. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. Our next guest is a Connecticut delegate, and she is the host of Suicide Prevention Saturdays. Please welcome Brooke Cheney.
I didn't know we were going alphabetical order by state. Hi everyone, my name is Brooke Cheney, and it is Saturday, and every Saturday night I go on Facebook Live and I say, hey, it's Suicide Prevention Saturday. And why is that? Why, as a gun owner in a school, I'm a firearms instructor and I own my own school in Harwington, Connecticut. Because 2 out of every 3 gun deaths that people talk about every single time you turn on the news is a suicide. So as gun owners, we have to stand up for people who don't have a voice. As you know, Sandy Hook, the most horrible thing ever. My kids were 5 and 6 years old that year. I cried for 2 weeks. January 1st, I'm like, okay, horrible things happen in the world. How do we actually stop violence? How do we actually stop people like Adam Lanza from doing what they do? So I looked. I didn't look to the NRA. I didn't look to the Brady campaign. I looked to the FBI. I looked to the Department of Justice. I looked to the Department of Education. And you know what I found? It's about communication. It's about you and I disagreeing and being able to hear each other anyway. Mental health is about people feeling heard, and violence prevention is about people being heard. Gang violence prevention programs that the DOJ puts on, it's about building community, that people can hear one another and feel heard. So, I am lucky enough to be part of the DC Project since the beginning. And before that, I got to go into Hartford, Connecticut and talk about why a 10-round mag ban is really and truly a gun ban, because so many people don't know that. I didn't know that in 2005 when I started to get into guns. I was that person who said, they still have bullets in their gun. What does it matter? Because I didn't know. So my plea to all of you wonderful people who've come to support the DC Project is, each one reach one. Find someone who was clueless like me, who knew that there was one presidential election every 4 years and I didn't bother voting because I didn't know enough about the candidates. To now, I go to DC every year with these wonderful women and I talk to our congressmen and I talk to our senators, and in my own state, I also talk. And I try to tell people, you do matter. Your one voice does matter. It's important that you step up. And if you don't talk to somebody, who will? If not you, who? If not now, when? I stole that from CCL. We use it all the time. So I know I was told I have 3 minutes and I don't have a timer on, so I'm going to say thank you very much for your time and your money.
Thank you, Brooke. Our next speaker is Lauren Hartnett. She's FDNY, a paramedic. She's the New York delegate to the DC project.
Apparently I'm the shortest one out of the group. Hold on one second.
No, you're not. I contest that.
We're close. We're definitely close. So I would like to start off by thanking each and every one of you for being here tonight. And not only to support the DC project, but to support your rights as an American citizen. Living in New York City, born and raised for the last 31 years, I know better than anybody what it's like to have your rights restricted, what it's like to have them chipped away at you little by little and eventually chunk by chunk. Organizations like the DC Project, CNJFO, they make it more difficult for politicians to chip away at your rights. They don't make it easy, but we make it more difficult, which is why organizations like this are so important, which is why your support is so important to us. So I truly would like to thank you all from the bottom of my heart for the work that you do and making what we do that much easier. Without the people, we would have nothing. As I said, I was born and raised in Staten Island, New York, and when I first started my journey into the firearms world, I was met with roadblock after roadblock, whether it was from my state's laws, my city laws, other surrounding states' laws. I decided to get involved not only to get answers, but to find solutions. After searching and contacting multiple organizations, I came across the DC Project. They were in their first year, they had just gotten back from DC, and they were already making an impression. So I reached out to Gabi Franco, and she was the only one I knew. So I reached out to Gabby to find out more, find out what were you guys about. I see that you're all women, and I want to know more. Hold on, sorry, I lost my place. I'm really bad at this part. After a few interrogating conversations, mainly by Amanda Suffecool, the next thing I knew, I was headed to DC as a New York State representative of the DC Project. This experience was life-changing for me. I had gone through my own struggles and I had gone through my own life-changing journey, and then to find a group of women and an organization that focuses on not only saving and protecting your Second Amendment right, but truly empowering women was a complete life changer for me. So many of the decisions and the paths that I ended up making in my life from that point forward have landed me here today, being one of your guest speakers, which is still a little bit awing to me. It's a group of women who we share the same mindset, we share the same goals, we share the same morals, and we have the same message. We're making an impact on not only the larger community of the country, but we're making an impact in our own communities. We're making an impact in our lives. I began to train others. I didn't think that a New York City girl, like a typical Staten Island New York City girl, would ever be somebody that people came to as a firearms, somebody who knows about firearms, somebody, I'm looking to get my gun permit, where do I go? That's not something that I ever thought a New York City girl would know, especially when I was 21 and 22 years old. To have a group of 50 women, and now hundreds of women, families, we're sisters. We're fighting to protect, and not only our rights, but we're fighting to protect ourselves. A common phrase you may hear is be your own first responder. And that is something that our leader, Diana Muller, emphasizes. And it's something that I emphasize as well, because I am a first responder. And I know what it's like to be hopeless, not just because of patients that I've interacted with, but because of my own experiences in life. And I don't ever want somebody else to feel like that. I don't want another woman to feel like that, to feel helpless and to feel hopeless and to feel like there is nothing that they can fight for, or that they are not worth fighting for. We are all worth fighting for. This is what happens when I go off script. I'm really sorry. But we're a family. We're a support system. We're mentors, and we're builders. We're pushing to do more, not only in the gun industry, but in life. We're truly empowered women fighting to empower others introducing more and more women into the gun industry. When we introduce women into the gun industry, they introduce their children, they introduce their families. We have a loud, sometimes my husband will tell me, obnoxious voice. So your attendance here means the world to me, and it means the world to the DC Project. It shows you believe in us, you believe in our message, you believe in our fight. So without you, we wouldn't be able to fight. So thank you for that. Thank you for your trust in us, for each of us that you see wearing teal. And just thank you. And donate.
Thank you, Lauren. Our next speaker, she was the first female shooter to represent Venezuela in the Olympics. She is recognized worldwide for her shooting skills and for her Second Amendment advocacy. Please welcome Gabi Franco.
I'm the shortest. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here, for joining us. My name is Gabi Franco. I'm an Olympian competitive shooter, mother, Army wife, and a very proud member of the DC Project. But most importantly, a very proud American. I was born and raised in Venezuela. And mi tierra querida is a land that the Venezuelan I knew is not the Venezuelan you know today. And it has only been about 20 years from that time. I can tell you that 29-year-old people, 25-year-olds probably don't know what was the Venezuela, different than what Venezuela you guys hear in the news. And that is sad and that's scary because it tells you how generations can change and they forget what the blessings that the generations in the past had. I moved here to the US about 20 years ago after I saw how the socialist government back then was destroying my country little by little. And many people didn't want to hear it. My coach was from Cuba. I was lucky enough to listen to him. And as I listened to him, listened to others who lived the same experiences. But many people Venezuelans couldn't even fathom how Venezuela could succumb to a government who will control their life, their success, their everything. Venezuela was the largest, it actually has the largest oil reserve in the world. And the government, that new government, Hugo Chavez, had a very robust agenda. Not only socialist was, but in the way how the country wanted to impose gun control. And for most people, they think, oh, so they came to your house and came to people's house and took their guns right away? No, it didn't happen like that. It happened through years. A process so slow, it took a decade and some more years, to that point where people wouldn't even care anymore because they would get used to the lie that gun control was going to reduce crime, that gun control was the best for the people. In other words, like I tell Americans nowadays, some politicians find and sometimes trying to control people's life and reduce their freedom for their common good. And before you say that that won't happen here, or America is not like Venezuela and other countries, see how our rights are being on hold. How much control the government has on their citizens. As a shooter back then, I saw it. I saw how little by little our freedoms were slipping away. And that's when I took the decision to come to the United States. Because I was young, I had dreams, and I couldn't fathom how somebody could put a barrier to my dreams. Why? I was a woman lifted, full of energy to succeed. So I tell you to pay attention, to listen to your guts, to love this country, because I tell you, I came to this country because I know this is the best country in the world to succeed. I am as American as I am Venezuelan. And this is a country worth fighting for. Whether you think you cannot do anything about it, you can. If you cannot donate, you can call your legislators. You have a phone call, you have a cell phone, you have a phone. Write a letter, send an email. Support organizations like ours who are up there in the front line, talking to legislators every time we can. Driving, flying to get there and making those connections, communication, and remind our legislators that our Constitution, they should respect our Constitution. And our Second Amendment, to remind them that the right to bear arms shall not be infringed. So with that, I just want to tell you, thank you for coming here. Thank you for supporting us. Thank you for supporting everything that has to do to protect our rights. I've lost them before. I'm fighting because I'm not going to go with that a second time. Not on my watch. Thank you.
That was so awesome. Can we take your picture? Yes. Would you like to go ahead, Trisha, you go with them. That way it's
Oh, no, it's all right. Do you want me over there too?
Wait a minute, shoot.
She wants me.
Thank you. Thanks, Gabby.
Yeah. Oh, wait.
I have to bend down a little bit. Yes.
Let's fix it. 'cause
Thank you.
Kelly-
That was amazing.
Well, Kelly's amazingly tall, so this is not going to work.
Thank you.
Teamwork.
Makes the dream work.
Sorry. We're bumper stickers.
That was amazing. Thank you, Gabby.
Eventually we'll get it right.
Okay, our next speaker is the founder of Armed and Feminine. She's the Northeast Regional Director for the DC Project. She is on the DC Project Advisory Board. She's the Pennsylvania delegate, and she has trained over 1,200 students. Please welcome Kelly Pidgeon.
We might be good fighters, but we really stink at AV technology. I apologize. And it's always crappy to follow Gabby. So as night falls upon us, we'll try to make this fairly quick. A real quick history of DC Project. You have some pamphlets on the tables, but Diana Muller's name has been thrown out. Of course, Diana's been a champion three-gunner, world champion shotgunner, and this was her thing. She actually calls it a God thing. Like when really cool things happen and come together, she's like, you know, it was just a God thing that this happened, and it truly was. And so way back when, 6 years ago, when we just had one woman from each state to go to Washington and visit with our legislators, that has now grown to our state level, and that's why we have our lovely Miss New Jersey and all of her delegates who are here now. You know, yay, so awesome. You know, as Gabby was talking about, you know, our rights being eroded, we don't just see that on a federal level. You know, right now there are at least 30 anti-gun bills at the federal level and probably just as many states. I'm from Pennsylvania, and we have no fewer than 35 anti-gun bills right now at the state level. So it's really important that we get out there and be the counter voice to all of these anti-gun organizations that are out there too. You know, and if Gabby said, if you don't want to use your voice, you know, email, call, whatever, and I would suggest we have a little paper sitting out on the table here. It's about effective Second Amendment messaging. And the real key, we were just in Washington, D.C. a few weeks ago, and we met with about 40 congressmen and women at a reception, and we told stories, and they said it's so important that you tell your stories because that's what they're going to remember. Too many people are unfortunately tired of hearing about, it's our constitutional right to keep and bear. Well, we know that, but the other side just always gains points by emotion. And so as women, we have a lot of stories, and those can be really impacting And people will remember the stories. They're not going to remember the slides. They're going to remember the stories. And so, when we talk about female gun ownership and the rise of that, we don't have that traditional profile of the guy in the orange ball cap with the beard and the flannel shirt. One of our teams actually, this was about 2 years ago or 3 years ago, met with a senator from legislative aid from a senator from California, who shall go nameless, and found out this was a bunch of women who were there to talk about their gun rights. And as she came in, she said, "Wow, you don't look like gun people." Well, what the heck do gun people look like? And that is really what we're trying to break, is that gun ownership has no profile. And by us being able to show that and why it's so important for women, it's breaking that mold. Who is going to vote against protecting women? Probably no one. So that's why we want to shine the light on why these gun rights are important for women, although all Americans, right? But we bring that trump card, shall we say, to the table. So the mission, if you haven't read it, we have education, preservation, and advocacy, really just to look at bringing awareness about safety prevention, like Brooke talked about. Everyone talks about gun violence. Like, we don't believe in gun violence. Like, violence is violence. And so we certainly believe that education is more important than legislation, right? And in other speeches that I make, I will say you cannot legislate good parenting, and you cannot legislate common sense. But if we do educate people, if we even put hunter safety back in schools for kids, think about the impact it could have in reducing negligent deaths. That's really, really important. That's what we're trying to do. So that whole advocacy piece is really where we're going here. I already talked about that. So as we now move into 6 years, and we've been really making a lot of progress, this whole thing is about relationships too, relationships with our legislators. And so it's a little more difficult for them not to talk to me if they know me by name. And a lot of them recognize us, they know us by name, they refer to us as which we like. You know what? We are tired and we are done being the silent majority. We are done not having a voice. Right? Go ahead, give me a clap. Yay. We don't want to have just a seat at the table. We want to have a voice in this conversation, and we're getting it. We are getting this voice. We've already had, in the last 3 weeks, 3 delegates back to Washington, D.C., testifying in front of Senate committee hearings, House meetings, and Diana Muller is going again on next Thursday to sit in front of the House Judiciary Committee. Again. We have had multiple of our state delegates testifying at the state levels, at their judiciary meetings. This is the impact that we've had in just a short amount of time, is that we are little forces to be reckoned with, because we are getting voices in the conversation in addition to seats at the table, and it's great. So we're getting utilized for our resources, and they're using our stories. They're using our stories that we tell them on the House floors and in committees, and that's a really big deal. They're hearing us. So let's see here. We're making a difference, having lawmakers understand that having a gun can either help you if you have one, or it can hurt you if you don't have one. And that's the message we're trying to send. So we are going to fight this wave of gun control that's sitting in our doorstep, and we are going to fight to preserve individual liberty under the Bill of Rights, and we will keep fighting for all of you so that the Second Amendment does not get infringed. Thank you. So thank you for helping us help all American gun owners, and let's make guns great again.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelly. Our next speaker is a Second Amendment champion. He was a plaintiff in a case that went before the Supreme Court of the United States called DC versus Heller. This is a case in which the right to self-defense was recognized as an individual right. So he refers to the Heller decision as that magnificent Scalia opinion. So I noticed that he doesn't use his own name when he refers to this epic Supreme Court decision. So please welcome Dick Heller.
thank you. And it's really great to follow all these awesome women organizations and effective women organizations. And
Wait, I'm gonna move this so you're speaking right into it, 'cause it's gotta be kinda straight in. Sorry for that. Okay.
and effective organizations. And the story about the Suicide Saturday sort of touched my heart. Oh, even dudes lose it sometimes. But I had a story once where we were at a party, small dinner party, like having fun like this, and a lady said she was going to commit suicide, and I said, "You come over here and talk to me." And now she is one of the most pro Second Amendment advocates you can imagine. She travels all over the country campaigning with freedom conservative candidates. So it's great to be here in New Jersey tonight, and I can hardly see my notes, so I'm going to knock out 90% of it. And I'm told...
We're gonna say this, Dick, you already know it, and they just wanna hear what you know, so just wing it. You want me to take it?
No, because I'll leave
wing
something
it.
out. I'll leave something out. But what you don't know is I spent hundreds of hours reading the same books Justice Scalia read, I found out. Because he quotes the same people, and he even mentioned Joyce Lee Malcolm. He read her book, and he even mentioned her when he wrote that magnificent Scalia decision. So I knew when I was reading her book, I was on the right track. And they all say the same thing. So I started researching history, and after hundreds of hours reading and putting this package together, which I guess I'll put in a book, is the question came to my mind, why do we have a Second Amendment? And then all these historical events will lead you to the conclusion, we got to be morons if we lose it. And then the next question comes up, and I say, how are we just so lucky to have our Second Amendment? And I didn't know anything back in 2008. I was the same boat that everybody else was. We have our Second Amendment rights. Well, you know, those Second Amendment rights came from thousands of years ago. And my favorite quote that I learned just this year is, does anyone know, hey, by the way, y'all in the back, come forward, please. Hey, come on up here. I'd like to get to know you, meet more of you. How many people know the name Marcus Tullius Cicero? Does anybody know that name? I see one hand. Okay, maybe two. Cicero is a man whose philosophy 51 years before Christ was born wrote philosophy of natural law, and he says nothing you do to protect your life is immoral. Anything you do to protect your life is moral. So this is nothing new, this Second Amendment. And then what I found was that King Alfred the Great, I'd always read about him as a student in history, living in Europe as a child. And I learned that in the year 881, Alfred the Great is the first Englishman in our Western culture that we adhere to that wrote the first, and it was called Aziz, was a French word because the French had just conquered him. And it was the first law that said it was the duty of every man to have arms. You must have arms, and when your child gets the age of 7, they must give their male child a bow and 2 arrows and make sure they learn how to use it. So I guess the next thing that comes is that's appropriate for us to know today. That's where it started. Oh, we hear about the Magna Carta, and going through there, it has nothing to do with the Second Amendment, but we always talk about it in history, and it was to do with taxes and trial by jury and more rights for the individual. Had nothing to do with arms because everyone was already required to have arms of the day. Then you move forward to, and I had to leave out all the juicy parts because you all would freeze to death. It's getting a little chilly and I need a beer. And in 1668, the Parliament had its army, and the British had their army, and they were at each other's throats on who would have supreme power. The people, we the people, through the citizens and the Parliament, or the king, because they actually believed in the divine right of king, and once they got rid of a king, they reestablished the monarchy again 10 years later. And that's just the way, that's where their heads were at that time. And the Parliament army was winning, so the current king of the day was King James II. His father had been beheaded over a confrontation with Parliament from taxes and disarming people. So he abandoned his throne, and William and Mary happened to be two grandchildren of the king, and they were equally in line for the throne, and they had just serendipity, they had married 20 years before. So they were secretly invited to come back to England. They said, look, the Catholics are taking over. We've disarmed the Catholics, and when there was a Catholic king, the Catholics disarmed the Protestants. So it was this ongoing battle of gun regulation, not for the purpose of disarming the population, like is what's going on here, but the purpose of power and control, and which political force had the most power. So after King James II abandoned his kingdom, William and Mary, who were loyalty in France, they were invited back, and they said, we'll be Protestant rulers, number one, and number two, we will sign the Englishman Bill of Rights in December of 1668. So on February the 12th of 1669, they signed the bill, and they were installed as British monarchs the next day on February the 13th. And if you read the English Bill of Rights, there's one phrase in there, it's line 7. Article 7 of the Englishman's Bill of Rights, it says, the monarchy will not disarm those Englishmen who are Protestants. So, once again, you have this power struggle going on. But it is a right that has existed until early in the 20th century. So you have a country that goes, just like Venezuela, you have a country that goes when everyone is armed and free, and suddenly they've been disarmed, and it's the same pattern that's following here. And I'm just so grateful to be part of such an organization. And then we move to the colonies. There are so many things that are not taught in American history about what great things people say. Now, if I can find it in my notes here, I like to say the exact right words, but Scalia, as you might imagine, was a great follower of Jefferson. And Jefferson was a lifelong gun owner and hunter, and he said, oh shucks, I lost my place here. But he said, Americans, it is my wish that Americans never be, the power of the people never leave, and that they never be disarmed. And there's another case that I wanted to mention, is in 1328, there's an English law that is still having its force felt here in America. What is that, 800 years later? 1321, yeah. 800 years later, how can an English law, 800 years old, still be affecting us in this country in our court system? Okay, probably no one. Does anyone know of something called the 1328 Statute of Northampton? There's one person, okay. It was a statute written in Chaucerian English that if I was going to read it, I was planning on reading it, and if I would, it would be a waste of time, because I had to read it about 20 times and appeal to higher intelligence to find out what it really said. But it said 3 things: we can confiscate your guns in the king's courts. Number 2, if you terrorize citizens. And number 3, it has to be in the sheriff's presence. Well, there's a court case right now that's on the West Coast in the Ninth Circuit called Young versus Hawaii. And what they refer to that 1328th rule because it was brought up in North Carolina in 1836. And in that decision, the Ninth Circuit said, we adhere to the 1328 rule of England 800 years ago, and they conveniently left out that you had to be terrorizing someone before you would have, you could be arrested, and you had to do it in front of a sheriff or a government agent. Well, if they can take your guns, under those conditions, they can take your guns, and what does that mean? There's a default red flag law. And that's the way they're interpreting that, because there is no gun happiness with the legal system at all in California. So as you keep your eyes open on the upcoming cases, you compare Brian Wren's concealed carry case and the Young versus Hawaii case, concealed carry case, and juxtapose that, keep your eyes open what's going to happen with the New York Supreme Court case, and it'll be a very interesting study. Do we win and keep our Supreme Court, do we keep our Second Amendment rights to conceal carry, or do we lose them? If we win, it's wonderful. If we don't, then you will see more gun regulations than you've ever seen before in your life. And that's what I'm keeping my eye on right now. So I think we're going over to the fireplace shortly.
Yes.
And we can ask question and answer. And I'll have a beer and.
Yes. So Dick, please stay right there.
Okay.
CNJFO would like to, the president of CNJFO has something for Dick. This is Dan Gerdovich, and he's going to.
No, it's not a gun.
It's not a gun.
Sorry. Sorry. Dick, there's really nothing else to say except that when you mention the Second Amendment, you have to mention Dick Keller.
Thank you.
So we're here to present you today with this Patriot pin. We've issued 15 of them. You're number 15. And that's a token of our appreciation and our recognition of what you are to the Second Amendment. Thank you very much, sir. Dude. You know, I have to show respect for the efforts you made. Just briefly, it's so nice and encouraging to come together tonight to see the Second Amendment and see that women are behind it. This is not the Second Amendment for fat old white men. It's the Second Amendment for everyone. And you guys really embody that, and I'm so proud to support that and to be part of that here.
Thank you.
I'd like to bring out, may I bring out one point that I just learned today?
What's that?
I learned last year there were, I think the number was 4 million guns, but the point is that the number of women gun owners more than doubled in 1 year. That is an awesome message for what women are doing and for what gun grabbers are doing.
Very good.
Thank you, Dick. Just so you know, I'm Teresa Einacker. I am the New Jersey delegate. If you have any questions and you want to talk to somebody who is the New Jersey delegate, come see me, okay? Okay, great. Thank you. Our next and last speaker would be a nationally syndicated host of Eye on the Target Radio. She is the Region 2 Director for DCP. She's on the DCP Advisory Board, and she's the Ohio delegate. Please welcome Amanda Suffecool.
I want a hand for the fact that I am the last speaker and you guys get to go back to alcohol and the food right after that. Right? So thank you very much, everybody, for coming. There's a couple things that I want to kind of wrap up is this. One of the things is this event is the first event that the DC Project has done on a state level. So you guys are groundbreaking in the people who put it on, the people who came, and the amount of money that is raised, hint, hint, hint. All of that is groundbreaking, and every other state is going to have to step up to it and step up their game because the hosts here The food here, everything has been top-notch, absolutely amazing. So the other part is to understand the gals from the DC Project. As they talk about how amazing they are, Holly Sullivan a couple years ago said this one statement, and she said, I came to the DC Project, and as I started to meet these women, I realized that they are people like me. And I had never really had people like me before. And so these women, most of them work a job, do advocacy, have a second thing. They've got multiple things going on in their lives. They are, if I can use a term, they are ass busters. These women are out doing stuff everywhere, and it's for the Second Amendment. The other part is they're doing it on their own time, on their own dime. Ask them how many vacation days they've got and how many of them they've traveled somewhere to use for the Second Amendment, to defend the Second Amendment. How many of them have looked at their vacation and said, okay, I can take my daughter here, or I can take my son there, or I can go on a trip with my husband, or maybe if I do this, I can coordinate it so we can spin through a Second Amendment event on our way to whatever the family vacation is, so we can kind of do both. That's the kind of women that we've got in this group. Last month, I was talking to Thomas Massey, the congressman from Kentucky, and he was asking us, you know, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? What really is it? And every one of these women has a different story of why. Some of them, it's because it's the Constitution. It's because they are fearful for their families. It's because they're fearful for their own safety. It's because it's a sport or an entertainment. It's because they feed their family with those guns. There's all different reasons. And for me, it's self-defense. And the real thing is that the bad guy is bigger, stronger, and faster than I am. He gets to pick the time, the place, the circumstances, and the victim. And I, the victim, get to choose the tool of self-defense, should the government allow it, and the amount of training that I have with that tool. That is it. That's the only choice I get. Do I have training? Don't I? Do I have a tool? Don't I? And so we are fighting for everybody to have those tools so that they can defend themselves, they can protect themselves. Plus, it's let's defend the country and let's defend, there's all these other reasons. And there's as many reasons as there are gals in the DC Project for why we do what we do. So I want to thank you very much for your support. I want to thank you for your coming. I'm giving you the 5-minute last call. If you have not gotten raffle tickets, please do so. Kelly Pidgeon is going to start the clock. You got 5 minutes, and then they're going to start drawing. There is also a couple of raffle kind of listy things where I know that the 223 is going way under retail value right now, and I know that there's a gun up there, and there's some other stuff. So take a look at it. Make sure, look in your pocket, see how much money you've got, and leave it here. So thank you very much. I'm Amanda Suffecool.
If you had questions about the rifle that is up for silent auction, Eric Saperstein of CNJFO is going to talk to you about it.
I'll make this real quick. I just want to get everybody's attention and get you guys focused on the auctions and the raffles in the back. Take a look back there at all the generous sponsors that gave. One in particular, you have a Springfield Saint. If any of you have been to a firearms store adoption center recently, you will find that the shelves are almost empty. Okay? There is a minor disruption to the peace and tranquility of the planet right now, and the entire population has decided to simultaneously arm itself. So you have an opportunity to get a firearm that is sought after and that most of this country is looking for, while a small faction of this country is telling you that you can't have. And in New Jersey, these angry black rifles, one of these Springfield Saints, is back there for you to have. Little details about this, real quick. Those of you that don't understand New Jersey firearms laws, if you've ever seen the movie Gremlins, you'll understand New Jersey firearms laws. What happens to a mugwai when you feed it after midnight? Anybody? It turns evil. You ever ask why? Daylight savings time, time zones, curvature of the earth, time and space. Why does this mythical creature change? You watch the movie, you don't ask why. Welcome to New Jersey's gun laws. In the state of New Jersey, if a semi-automatic rifle has more than 2 evil features, Guess what happens to the mugwai? All of you turn evil. 2 evil features, you're fine. 3 evil features, you start killing everybody in the parking lot after you get the gun. So semi-automatic rifles, 2 evil features. They consist of a pistol grip, a detachable magazine, a telescopic or folding stock, a flash hider, a threaded barrel, or for God's sakes, a bayonet lug. I'm going to give them the bayonet lug because there has been a history. Some of you might remember some bayonettings in Trenton. Anybody? Washington crossed a river on Christmas morning was the last time it happened. But because of this, you have politicians that are rolling over you, writing ridiculous gun laws where 2 evil features is enough. The 3rd evil feature, you take that gun, you walk into Pennsylvania, yeah, the mugwai turns back into a mugwai. You start helping little old ladies across the street, you pay your back parking tickets, and you confess your sins to the IRS. But in New Jersey, you're evil. So here's what I want you to do is fight that. You're gonna fight that by going back, looking at that saint, going to the silent auction, which I think is only $8.25 right now.
That's correct.
Let's see that triple. Let's get some funding and let's get some support for these women, for Mr. Heller, for people that are helping you with your gun rights. Step up. Thank you everybody for coming, ladies and gentlemen. Go back to those auctions and raffles and let's see your support.
Thank you, Eric. We're done. Thank you. You did great. Thank you. Is it off?
It is.
Somebody came over and said, Andrea said people want you to wrap it up. Something like
Are
that.
you Teresa?
I am, yes.
I'm Patricia Klein.
Oh my God, Patricia.
I'm Patsy Klein.
Oh, I love it. It was so nice to meet you.
I said I have to introduce myself.
Please, thank you. I'm so glad you did. This is so wonderful. I hope you had a good time.
Oh, I did. I had an awesome
I got some.
time.
This is my daughter, Mary.
Hi, Mary. How
Nice
are
to
you?
meet you.
Yes.
She's
it's a
my
photographer.
Yes,
yes.
yeah. We put her to work out here.
Was
you know.
a nice. Oh, this is a nice
beautiful
venue
place.
too.
Yeah, really
yes,
nice.
It is.
Yeah, very
and
grateful
so
to them.
A lot of people came out. It looks like.
Yep.
So everything worked out well.
Yes, it was
for
really,
you.
very good.
That's
so,
good.
yes. Oh my goodness, it was kind of overwhelming. I've never done a fundraiser before, so.
But this is good.
Yeah.
It was for the first time. It's a nice turnout.
Thank you.
Yes.
And, I'm very grateful that the weather was good and, cooperated. Today it looked a little dicey.
Yeah,
the
'cause
clouds
it was
are
raining a little and then it just stopped.
The clouds started rolling in and we got a little bit scared and moved a lot of stuff from the outside back into the, and all of that, but it worked out great.
It's beautiful.
So I'm so glad you came.
Great success.
I hope you get to meet
I'm
people.
going to reach out to you
Please do.
because I'm going to be doing a fundraiser too
Oh, yeah.
at a gun range.
Oh, I love it.
And
I love
might
it.
need some